Whenever you think of FlameFrags, you probably think of the villain of the Unstable SMP.
Okay, maybe I am selfish. Whatever.
The one character who makes it his sole mission to be the best at killing other players.
I am a Minecraft combat master. A master of every weapon.
And that's what I thought too until recently. You see, the other day I was looking through my comment section when I saw this comment. Funny how Flame is actually the least likely to reach a villain arc. And the more I thought about it, the more it seemed like it was actually true. But in order to understand why Flame might actually be the least likely of the protagonists to become a villain, we need to look at what actually makes a villain in the first place. Usually, villains have one or more of these traits: a lack of morals/empathy, a desire for power or control, a willingness to sacrifice other people to achieve a goal, the belief that ends justify the means, or even using past experiences to justify evil. And when you look at the other three protagonists, you can find at least one of these traits pushing them further towards villainy. For example, let's start with Parrot. Parrot genuinely wants to do the right thing, but we've already seen him slowly compromise these morals when he believes violence is necessary. He's blackmailed people into joining his army, he's executed soldiers who refused to cooperate, and even allowed prisoners to be tortured. We've seen over and over again that Parrot cares so much about his people that he believes that almost anything can be justified if it's done for the right reason. And then there's Wemmbu. Wembu's entire story revolves around power and freedom. He's constantly being forced into situations where he has to become stronger just to escape the control of someone else. And because of that, we've seen him repeatedly turn into increasingly destructive methods to get his freedom back. And then finally, there's Spoke. Spoke is probably the easiest character to explain here. His obsession with power, control, and his reputation has repeatedly pushed him into manipulating and betraying the people around him. So clearly, all three of these protagonists have something that can push them into becoming a villain. Parrot with his tunnel vision trying to do the right thing, Wemmbu with his cycle of power and freedom which he has to use destructive methods to escape out of, and Spoke with his constant manipulation and betrayals. However, FlameFrags is the only protagonist that doesn't have anything pushing him to become a villain, and despite being one of the most violent players on the server, violence isn't actually what drives Flame at all. What actually drives Flame is that he wants to become the strongest on the server, and the way for him to do that is by training and fighting stronger players. The violence that Flame's character exhibits is not comparable to any other player, because while all the other protagonists use violence as a means to get what they want, Flame's violence is often limited to proving his strength. In fact, I would argue that Flame has some of the strongest morals on the server, and shows the most empathy. We see this in I Became the Strongest on a Hardcore Minecraft server. Flame tracks down and takes control of Eggchan's pearls, knowing that they'll give him leverage over Wemmbu. If Flame were to pull even one of these pearls, Arachnid would realize that Eggchan had escaped captivity and use Egg's other pearls to pull him back and kill him. Flame uses this as leverage to force Wemmbu into a fair fight, as he knows Wemmbu cares about Egg deeply. At first, this seems like a villainous move, as Flame is using another player's life to get what he wants. However, upon realizing that Wemmbu wasn't interested in a fight at all and was hyper-focused on freeing Eggchan, Flame said this.
"You're gonna give me the pearls back regardless?"
Yes, I was gonna give you the pearls back regardless. Like, I know we're rivals and all, right? But I would also say we're like friends. And, you know, friends don't ban each other's friends. You know, that's not really what friends do. I just wanted a duel, bro.
You see, it was never Flame's intent to actually put Egg's life in danger. He only used the pearls as a means to get Wembu's attention. And once he realized that Wemmbu was distracted and not fighting to the best of his ability, Flame realized that the fight wouldn't prove anything, and let Wemmbu have the pearls. This is just one example of Flame's character and his morals. But this has happened countless times, where Flame would rather fight in a situation where both him and his opponent are playing to the best of their abilities. So Flame, being the most moral protagonist, doesn't need to hide any of his actions. He doesn't need to justify them by pretending that they're for the greater good. He just wants to constantly improve his skills and prove that he's the strongest on the Unstable SMP. In terms of hunger for power or control, Flame clearly wants neither. At least not in the traditional sense, like wanting a kingdom or to rule over a group of people. Flame, with all of his PvP skills and his position as the strongest on the server, could easily get a position of control. If he wanted to, he could take over any civilization that he chooses to, or even create one of his own. Like for example, when he kills powerful leaders like Mistral, he could take over the Mist civilization. But he's never really considered forming an empire or anything along those lines. He also doesn't really need power. He doesn't really have something that he would need it for. His goals are just about getting stronger and proving himself, so power or control isn't something that he'd need. Flame doesn't really sacrifice other people, and especially not innocent players. A really good example of this is in the 2 episodes covering the Mist civilization. During his time in the Mist, Flame loses Lomedy and can't find him anywhere. While searching for him, he's met with a player named NotSkrilley, who tells Flame that him and his friends could help him find Lomedy as long as Flame would help them escape the Mist. Flame agrees as he realizes that these players are the only ones who can help him travel through the Mist. And when one of these players tells Flame that he found Lomedy, Flame immediately orders him to take him there. However, the player states that he can't do that unless Flame trains the entire village in PvP, as they can't risk dying while helping him. Flame reluctantly agrees while FlowTubes goes to the tunnel where Lomedy supposedly is. At first, this doesn't make any sense because why would Flame not just go to the tunnel with FlowTubes to ensure that he can get to Lomedy as soon as possible? Well, we get the answer towards the end of the video.
Please, you're the only one I have left.
Only because I promised and always tried my best to keep my word.
Flame is clearly a man of his word and tries to keep all his promises. If Flame was actually a villain, he would most definitely have left all the players from the village to fend for themselves, while he searched for Lomedy with FlowTubes. But instead, he decided that he needed to keep his promise to the village and get them out of the mist alive. So clearly, Flame doesn't just sacrifice other people to achieve his own goals. But what about his mindset? We know that Parrot has developed a mentality where the ends justify the means. If he believes something needs to get done to protect his people, then almost anything becomes acceptable. But Flame's mentality is basically the complete opposite. Flame's ultimate goal is to become the strongest player on the Unstable SMP. But unlike Parrot, Flame doesn't believe that simply achieving this goal is enough, because the way that he gets there matters to him. If Flame wants to prove that he's the strongest, then he actually needs to prove that. Meaning that he has to fight the strongest players, improve his own abilities, and win with skill. He can't just take the easiest possible routes to win, because that defeats the entire purpose of what he's trying to prove. And that's why Flame has developed such a strict code of honor around PvP. For example, Flame constantly rejects weapons that he believes are shortcuts or easy ways to win, like the mace, which he's burned 3 of. Flame doesn't really kill people who aren't involved in his fights, because he knows that killing an innocent player doesn't prove that he's the strongest player. Furthermore, Flame tries to ensure that all his fights are fair and that he follows the rule of combat, even when it's against an opponent that he completely hates. For example, when Flame found the leader of the toxic Minecraft team, Razor, he could have easily dropped him right there as he had the gear advantage. However, when Razor argued that Flame had such a high gear advantage in the fight, Flame decided to agree to switching out his netherite armor.
In order to get a fight out of Razor, the leader of the toxic team, I'd have to ditch my netherite armor, weapons, and strain potion, because according to him, it's a cheat.
And even when Razor gave Flame iron gear instead of diamond, Flame still decided to fight, demonstrating that he's willing to fight on his opponent's terms. And then finally, we've seen Flame be manipulated and used time and time again on the Unstable SMP. However, no matter how much Flame has gone through, he never exhibits the other traits we discussed before. For example, when Parrot was using FlameFrags to gain access to Clown's nether vault, Flame realized that he was being used after overhearing a conversation between Parrot and Theo. Flame then switched sides and helped Clown by giving him Parrot's location. After a long conversation between Parrot, Flame, and Clown, things started to go sideways when Clown said that he's gonna execute Parrot. Parrot then says his last words, which is an apology to Flame.
I low-key, like while you left, I thought about like what I did, and it was kind of messed up, I can't lie. So, yeah.
Flame then accepts this apology and decides to defend Parrot against Clown. So it's clear that even after being manipulated and used and having every opportunity to become a villain, Flame doesn't, choosing to be a good person over looking for revenge.